this episode of the Business Communicators.
Success doesn't teach you much if you learn with all the failures. Every failure is a new learning that will take you to success.
You're listening to the Business Communicators. And now your hosts, Austin Stepp, Hattie Horn, and Thomas Bain.
Hattie Horn, how's it going?
Austin!
Been a while.
How are you?
Good. I think last season, which we recorded, I don't know, a year ago, 9 months ago, back when I lived in Texas, the background's sort of the same. I try to keep it as much as possible. You can see the golf clubs here, but it's a little bit different now.
But we consider that a season, though. That's more than a season.
Exactly.
Like,
but it was like Thomas and I last time, and Thomas did not abandon us on the podcast.
oh, I hope not. I need my Thomas. Now he's like an Elvis sighting. Where are you?
He says he's having technical difficulties.
Or he just wants to be there.
That's probably accurate too. So.
Or he wants to make an entrance, you know.
So we don't know if Thomas is going to join us on the return of the Business Communicators podcast, but if he doesn't, that's fine. We do have a guest on today's show, and that's Daniel Méndez, who we'll be bringing on here. And let's go ahead and call it right now. Actually, I just went solo layout, so let's get everybody back on. I guess we're all having technical difficulties today. We've been out of practice. Daniel Méndez, thank you so much for joining us on the Business Communicators. And if you are not familiar with Daniel, you've probably seen him on LinkedIn, specifically when it comes to communications jobs and kind of really helping to build up the communications community. So Daniel, we're excited to have you on the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Longtime fan. I was very happy. I think it was like a year ago or maybe a little more when I mentioned the podcast to PR Week, and hopefully that drove some people your way. But super excited to be here, talk to you, and also excited that there's going to be a new season. So
yeah, we're excited too. We're excited too. It's something that we spoke about, all three of us on the call. I don't know, about a month ago or so. And the cadence is going to be a little different. We're not going to do a weekly show, but it should be fun. We just brought Thomas back in. I guess he was having some technical issues, Thomas.
Your ears are burning, aren't they?
They were. And actually, I was going to echo what everybody was talking about is that when you take a small break, especially in business communications, to keep your technology up to date. So you're not having to update when you're logging back in and passwords and those kind of things. That's exactly what it was. And so I was like, oh, come on. And so when you said that, I was like, thank you so much for giving me that perfect segue. But thank you.
Well, I think what I'm realizing now is, since we just went to 4-screen mode, that my background, although I thought it was the same, the dimensions of this room are not quite the same. So I have a lot of open floor space here, which is really problematic.
Minimalistic.
As long as it's clean. That's all
last time I had this look, but we can't do that. So we're gonna figure this out. It's like we're podcasting for the first time again. So here we are. But
that's all right. That's all right. That's okay.
So
we're gonna do it anyway.
Exactly. So Daniel, we're excited to have you on the show. And for those that aren't familiar with you, just tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, and tell us a little bit about Comms Jobs as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Well, Comms Jobs is a community, an open community, I like to call it, that has been going on for about 4 years now, and mainly lives in LinkedIn. It started as part of a personal experiment when some colleagues asked me how they could start getting back into the job market and started connecting with people. And I had rebuilt my network. I put a lot of dedication to rebuild it, and started following a lot of communicators only in my LinkedIn since I moved from Chile to the US in 2015, end of 2015. And so I mentioned to them, like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of job openings and training materials and just interesting conversations in my network. So I'm going to start sharing those under the hashtag Comms Jobs so that you can follow that, and then you'll be able to see it. And that was end of 2020. Fast forward to, February 2025. The community has grown significantly. There's more than 14,000 people following on LinkedIn, and more than just sharing jobs and training opportunities. It became a place where people starting finding each other, right? And I think it's a really common topic that communicators are just really awful at communicating with each other and really self-advocating for our area of expertise, our field. And I just love how it's become a place where people are just finding each other, right? And now we have like monthly hangouts. We've had a couple of in-person events, started a list of mentors that people can access. So it just has become a community where people are helping people, and I'm just super proud of it.
You know, to me, this is really fascinating because I took a lot of, kind of passion into trying to help others with building out the LinkedIn and helping finding jobs back in 2020 because, in COVID, it was so important. I feel like those first few months, there were a lot of people that were let go from work. And I feel like a lot of the people that were impacted were folks that were contractors or had their own small businesses, and, they weren't able to work with large corporate clients anymore. So I think it's great to see what you have done and how the community has grown. And Mike Klein over at We Lead Comms is doing the same type thing with his platform. And I'll tell you who I think it impacts the most. I think that these LinkedIn and online communities are going to really force the hand of the professional organizations, like a PRSA, like an IBC, that are still charging $350 a year for membership. That is a tough barrier entry for people that are looking for work. And I understand, like people like you and Mike are still affiliated and associated with those groups, and there's a lot of people involved. But I think those groups have their days numbered because of communities like this that are out there on LinkedIn. That's my hot take, at least.
Yeah, it's a strong hot take. Sorry, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is I echo what Austin's saying, but I also think what you hit the nail on the head was anybody who's a professional in any industry. The worst lawyer is themselves, the worst doctor is themselves, the worst communicator is themselves when they're trying to promote themselves because we're so used to putting other people forward. And so I love what you've been doing, not only putting jobs out there, but also the training. It's how do we stay forward? And that's where I think Austin hit the nail on the head about it's going to put pressure on the companies who, might treat their employees bad because now you have a comms group that can truly move the needle, but it's also going to put pressure on the professional organizations who charge lots of money for training.
You have to adapt.
Yeah.
Well, I have a different type of question for you, Daniel.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, given this is a community, what do you anticipate now in this new climate? And there's even more layoffs going on. There's people who are going to be shifting depending on what's happening to themselves, helping very quickly. And do you anticipate more people coming to your community versus, because LinkedIn is probably one of the biggest professional connection places around. It's the biggest. However, when it comes to success of finding those roles, and I know, like you say, community, what do you anticipate coming up, say within the next 6 months or things like that, given all the layoffs, the changing environment, even the type of people who would even join your community?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And honestly, I think what makes comms jobs different is that's why I call it an open community. When I started thinking about this, I didn't want to create a group where people will have to request to join or will have to know someone to get into the community, or, like many others, pay to get access to those resources. I wanted to create something that it didn't depend just on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is the beautiful thing about comms jobs, because it started growing and growing and has been adopted broadly by many communicators when they're advertising either job opportunities, or they want to gather thoughts from the community of practice, or they're just trying, to find other communicators. And I've described, comms jobs as a little bit like the Batman signal, right? Like you just put it out there, and then you know that you're going to find something that is related to the communications field. So in answering a little bit of your question on what to expect in the next 6 months, I think that one of the main challenges that communicators find when they either voluntarily or involuntarily go back to the job market is that they don't know where to start, where to start connecting with people, find out, who's doing what, who can refer, who can recommend, who's hiring, right? And I think having this ongoing communication and open communication with the rest of the community will help anybody that becomes, available in the market. One thing that I think it's something that is worth reinforcing and goes back a little bit to what we were discussing in the beginning, of like how you can stay ready so you don't have to get ready, is that I always say networking is not a one-time thing, right? It's not something that takes place during a period of time and then it's over. I always compare, and it's a little corny, I acknowledge that, but I always compare it to gardening. When you start networking, you're basically planting a seed that you expect will become a strong relationship and a relationship based on trust. But that doesn't come overnight. It's something that takes a long time, right? And what I always tell people is that, the best time to start networking was at the beginning of your career, no matter when that was. The next best time is today. And when you start, you just must continue going. That is a little bit of what happened to me. When I moved from Chile to the US, I came here without a safety net, right? Like I decided to move here, so it wasn't a company transfer. Just quit my job there, try to find another job here. And one of the things that I never really thought about was I'm leaving my whole network at home. I don't have anybody who can advocate for me here. I don't have any classmates, professors, bosses, colleagues, anybody that knows what I'm capable of. So I had to rebuild all of that from scratch, and it was very tough. But as soon as I landed my first job in the US, I said, this was painful, so I'm not going to go through it again. And since then, I've just continued to network and connect with people and build relationships. And that is something that I feel it will happen, especially now in this very dynamic environment where so many things are changing. People are not able to navigate this by themselves. So they're going to start looking for communities and looking to connect with others so they can navigate this in a more collective manner instead of just being by themselves.
Yeah, when it comes to personal branding too, nobody knows what you're doing unless you're telling them, right? You
Exactly
have
right.
you have to actively be engaged. You have to add value too. I think you have to be someone that, like you said, build that trust, that respect that goes a long way. It doesn't have to be just in the comm space. It could be in the business space. It could be the HR space. We know the SaaS people are out there, definitely pushing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. But there's a stat that I heard several years ago. I think it's 80% of jobs that are that are hired are through some sort of connection that you have. And now, if you can't network in person, you can network online. So that's a benefit. It's also really important to make sure that you're actively engaged on LinkedIn, posting regularly. That's how recruiters can find you for roles. And that's how they can send, you DMs. The algorithms have changed a little bit. It's not just about keywords. So, posting and engaging with folks really does make a huge difference.
Yeah. And something that I think is very important that you're saying, Austin, is that networking looks different for every person. Like, it's not something that it's cookie cutter. And I feel like a lot of people don't do it because they feel that pressure, right? There's this collective, thought of thinking of networking as exchanging business cards, walking into a room full of people and awkwardly start talking about opportunities. Like, that is not how it goes for everybody. I always say that when you remove the concept of networking, and boil it down to the essential thing of why you're doing that, is that you're connecting with people, you're making friends. That is what it is. And friendships are based in trust, and trust don't happen over just one drink or one dinner or one exchange card. It goes, in the long term as you help each other. So I always, recommend that people, if they start networking, their house is on fire, normally that will come out as something very desperate, and it's always going to come out as a favor. The best time to start networking is really when you're, in a position of calm, when you're working, when you are in a safe space. That's when you're supposed to be making those connections and giving to the community, so that in the long term, if you need to go back to the community and ask for something, then that trust is built. And the other thing is that on personal brand, is the same thing. It doesn't look the same for everybody. I tend, to be very active on LinkedIn because it's something that, one, is a hobby, two, is something that fulfills me, and I try to do in my spare time. But not everybody has to be posting 3 times a day, every day, and creating fresh content all the time. Sometimes it's just maybe once a week. Sometimes it's not even posting original content, but it's contributing to the discussions and commenting on others people's posts, and that it's also going to add visibility. So it's really about finding what works for you and what is comfortable for you, so that you don't feel overwhelmed by it and then end up getting consumed by it, and then you don't do it anymore. So thought it would be good to point that out.
I just wonder if you have any stories you could share of like a networking event tactic that you did that just blew it away, or one of those networking stories that you can kind of be like, "Oh, I really shouldn't have gone to that event," or "Ooh, that was a rough one." Because I know I have a couple, and have seen a lot of different things. People who have over consumed, and people who are the social introvert who stands in the corner the whole time. And I'm just wondering if you have any stories, because it sounds like you have quite a few networking events.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started speaking English in 2011. So when I moved to the US in 2015, I was not as fluent as I am today. And just imagine, first time living in the US and never attended a networking event before in English. I didn't know anybody in the room. Like, it was not something that, was invited to or anything. It was just literally a ticket that I purchased to attend a Chamber of Commerce event. And I just showed up and didn't really talk to anybody that night. It was the first networking event that I attended here in the US. And it's not something that I look back and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have gone there, right? But it was, I felt so ashamed and frustrated and unprepared. I had so many learnings from that first experience, because I look back and was like, well, I should have really study a little more, like who was going to be in the room, who I wanted, like one person that I really wanted to talk to and connect with that night. What was my story? What was my elevator pitch? What type of companies I was looking to connect with? What do I wanted people to know me for, right? All of those things, I didn't think about it. I just showed up and was expecting that, walking in the room, people are going to start talking to me and it was going to go fine. So probably that was one of my worst experiences networking, but also one that I got a lot of learnings from. And a very successful one, I would say, is just a couple of weeks ago. With 14,000 people connected in LinkedIn, I get a lot of messages of people asking for, my time to either, pick my brain, or, hey, do you have some advice in this area? Or are you open to mentoring or coaching? And at this time, because of my day job, I don't have a lot of availability. I already have 2 mentees, and I try to connect with people on a weekly basis over the weekends for coaching. But they were coming, and I figured, look, I don't have the time, but I'm sure that a lot of people in my network may have the time, and also are wanting to connect with other folks. So I put out I put a post there saying, like, hey, if you're open and have the ability to mentor folks in the communications field, please drop your name and in this list, and then people can find you, right? And they know that you are open. To date, we have more than 260 people that signed up from 23 different countries. And I was mind blown. Like, I never expected that, especially because I've been focusing comms jobs, particularly in the US. But with this, I've realized that it's something that goes beyond borders. It's something that it's needed in multiple parts. And more than 20 people in that list already have connected with folks across the world to start mentoring and connecting with other communicators. And of course, that brought a lot of new relationships for me as well. So I think that's been one of the best moves that I've done in terms of networking, and it makes me very happy because it started from a perspective that I was not asking something for me. It was really asking something and giving something to the community, and it paid back big time.
That's cool.
Do you find when you talk about mentoring, and I was thinking back to what you were talking about earlier, people not knowing how to network or not how to do it, because sometimes when people think about networking, it's almost like speed dating. You're in there, like you say, you're passing out a business card or whatever. Do you find yourself the folks that are at these events, or the folks that are asking for advice, are the younger people? Are they not as, or they're just not as experienced? Because to me, when I hear about networking, I'm coming there for a purpose. And like you said, sometimes you're prepared, but I'm not always prepared, but I do know how to introduce myself to persons. But is it that person who hasn't been working in the industry that long? Because you would think that folks have been working in the industry or working as communicators for 20 years or more, or 15 or whatever, would have gained some experience in it. So who are you talking to when you talk about mentoring and all of that?
So many different people, and I'm so glad that you bring that up, because it's really all over the place. For example, this community and why I started Comms Jobs, it was because at the company I was working at the time, there was a big reorg. Unfortunately, a lot of people lost their jobs during that time. And while I was not impacted, I felt, I wanted to help out. And a lot of those folks have been in that same company for 20 or 15 years, but the same company. A lot of them, it was their first job out of school. So if you think about it, if you've been in a company for 15, 20 years, all your network is basically in that company. And you haven't been in the market for 15, 20 years. And things have changed so much. So I'm talking to people that are in that position, very senior people that have not been in the market in so long, and they don't even know where to start. Some others, are younger folks that are still in college. Some of them have recently graduated, and they're just looking to put their first foot up the door, right? And others, have been working for 4 or 5 years, and they're like, what is going on? Because those people, had their internships remotely because of COVID. So they started working in companies fully remote, and suddenly they're being asked to go back in the office, and a lot of them struggle on how to function in that space. So there's just so many different realities, and something that I've learned, in connecting with so many of these people, is to really don't assume anything, because everybody has their own struggles, especially when they're starting to connect. And some, there's so many different styles too. Some folks are very introverted, they just don't feel comfortable with the traditional concept of networking. And what I tell them is like, then don't network. Maybe just reach out to someone and ask for their opinion. Like reframe how you start approaching that. And when you approach people with a request to learn from them, or even better, if you reach out to them with something that can help that other person in any way, you start from a different perspective, and you start with different expectations as well. With, you know, if you lower the bar for yourself, a lot of times makes it easier, because we are very good at getting in our own way and overwhelm ourselves, you know, with trying to fulfill this idea of networking. But it doesn't look the same for everybody. So that's why I always say, you know, do what works for you. And some people are just really looking for that first step, like, where do I start? And then they take it from there.
I think for a lot of us, I totally understand what you're saying about the remote side, and that's kind of why I'm a proponent now of returning to office. I think that there's a huge gap between folks that have only worked remote and don't go to events. You know, they're just in that same circle, maybe going to happy hour with the same people. And if you're not going to the office, you're not interacting with those people. Like you are missing out on those pop-in office visits. You're missing out on FaceTime with leadership. And I think if you want to grow in the company, that's difficult. But you know, if you're in a place in life in which you're content with just being in that same position and working from home, doing the day-to-day tasks, then that's great. I think that's where remote work can be beneficial, especially if you have kids, family, things that you need to take care of on the day-to-day basis. One thing that I like to recommend is any city that you might travel to, whether it's for work, whether it's for a conference or a meeting, try to pair up coffee with, you know, if you're in media relations, maybe it's reporters in the area. If you're on the sales side, maybe it's with potential clients, current clients, you know, people that you've worked with in the past. If it's communicators, then maybe it's someone that you've seen on LinkedIn and you want to reach out and have lunch, dinner, drink, something like that. And I've been in a situation where I've, you know, had 3 to 4 coffee meetings and have been hopping around Chicago, you know, having coffee, and have been way too caffeinated in the afternoon to function. But I think those types of things are great. And it's also important, again, I think, to live in that online community, because if you're at a dinner in Washington, D.C., and you run into someone that you've never met in person, but you've connected online for the last 10 years, it's fun to have a 10 to 15 minute conversation. So just some of my advice on the networking side and kind of how to bridge the gap between, you know, behind a camera and in person. You know, it's unfortunate right now that, you know, Hattie, Thomas, and I haven't been able to, quote unquote, network in person or record in person since we've been doing this podcast. You know, I haven't seen Hattie in person in, gosh, a year, maybe. I think the last time was maybe fall 2023 ish.
Nah, you
But
saw me last year.
we've spoken on the phone. I don't know if I saw you before I moved to Florida. And then
You
Thomas,
have.
No, you have. I thought we did like a luncheon kind of thing, just the three of us getting together, or not lunch. Yeah, lunch, just getting together, not
still,
recording.
We're not
it's
going to
been a year.
debate it,
It's
but
been a,
you
it's
No,
been
I
a
know.
year.
But it's been a
while.
minute.
It
But
has
what
been.
you was talking about, Austin, you say, you know, you're a proponent of coming back to the office, where I'm clearly not. I'm just letting y'all know.
Yeah.
Because I'm that type of person, and I don't judge you on that, because I get where you, because I've been in the office with people 24/7, and there's some people you still don't talk to, and they don't connect. So it could go either way. I think it's an individual thing. Whether you're in an office or whether you're working remote, reaching out to a person is reaching out to a person, because if you haven't met them anyway and you don't work with them and you see them on LinkedIn, you're reaching out to them virtually. But again, to me, it's personal. It's what you want to do, and how you want to present yourself to someone as an individual. Not so much where you're located.
And I think one thing that you do differently than others is you're on the road a lot. You know, like you are going to Denver this week, you said, and so you're interacting with people on the road, and some people that are fully remote and not going to those, you know, activities or things like that. That's where
And some of them
a
I
little
don't
bit
talk to,
challenged.
even when I meet them on the road.
But
So
right,
it's individual. That's just me.
You're
That's
still getting that
individual.
FaceTime with people. You're still meeting prospective clients, and I think
When
that's
I
adding
choose,
value.
yeah, some clients, some colleagues. Again,
Right.
everything is a choice. Is really what it boils down to. for Pete, because I just started working and traveling in the last 4 years a lot more. But I'm seasoned. I've been in this game for years.
Yeah.
And working in
Yeah,
the office for years.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I a lot of times, you know, you when you start talking about this, it's either like, you know, working in the office, being fully remote, you know, but I think there's a really important concept here, which is flexibility, and it talks a little bit about what you're
100%.
saying, Hattie, about, you know, like what works for everybody, right? And that's why it's not, you know, one size fits all. Because I always explain, you know, for example, if you're in executive communications, I find it like especially difficult to do that work fully remote. You need to be with the person you're supporting, especially if you're a ghostwriter or you're, you know, interacting with you know, very high level executives that need to speak to a big population of employees. You need to understand what those employees are doing on a day-to-day. You need to understand what are their concerns, you know, and there's no better way to do that than just hang out with them, right? Be in the lunchroom, the dining room, whatever, you know, whether make their shift for the day, you name it, right? Doing it fully remote and without understanding that context where your executive is going to be performing, right? It's just very hard. Same with, you know, some type of communication roles, especially if you're in an early career. I think a lot of the work that we do as communicators is really a craft. And that craft, it's not learned by theory. Like, you have to see others do it. You have to see others, you know, what are the things that they consider when they're making decisions in the space? Because more times than we like to admit, you know, we make decisions based on our gut, right? And that is something that you kind of learn in being in that environment. So I just think, you know, communicators work in the business of emotions and the very human side of business. And it's a collective effort. So you can't do it by yourself sitting at home, you know? Now, as Austin was saying, you know, it really depends, because there are some roles that I acknowledge that could be fully remote and support, but that's why it's a spectrum. And the best thing to provide that accommodation for everybody is to be flexible and understand that everybody has different needs.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to where you are in your career too. You know, like what kind of role are you looking for? What kind of role do you have? You know, all of those factors go into play. Thomas, what were you saying?
I was going to say, I'd like to say that marketing communications is a contact sport. How many contacts are you reaching out to the people who you need to, and how many internal contacts are you touching? I try to say, meet where the person you're meeting, the person that you're interacting with wants to be met at. You help build that trust. Is, you know, you have the people who want the camera as their security blanket because, hey, I'm not seeing them face to face because I have a fear of XYZ. Or then you have others who, I don't like the camera because it's a very transactional relationships that we have only on the camera. And so to your point, where do the people that we want to talk to, need to talk to, want to be? I'll say personally that leading marketing communications teams, there's certain aspects that I was like, we performed better in person, where you could bounce ideas off of in real time because you're looking at the mock-up of a billboard or you're looking at the mock-up of a newspaper article. And then there's a digital ad that, you know, they were in Kansas City and I was in Houston, Texas, and cool, we're good. Let's keep moving. We never saw each other face to face.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. Collaboration. I do believe in collaborative work, in face-to-face collaboration. To me, I like that energy in the room. I do believe in that, and I like that. And as communicators, we have to be collaborative because, like Thomas is saying, we're meeting people where they are. Whoever everyone's your customer. Even as a communicator, this person is your customer. So you're trying to understand, what are their pain points? Are you even talking to the right people? It's not just being in the room, even as you're networking, like you were saying, Daniel, it's you're going to, who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to focus on? So all of that, as communicators, we have to bring all of that into one. And these are things that we learn as we evolve in our careers.
Yep.
How to do those things. Everything is a learned experience. And you take those and you make that value grow for you as you go on. But as you all saying, you got to make that first step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like stepping out on faith.
Jumping, stepping. Yeah, sure. Jump, step, interchangeable.
No matter where you are, stepping out on faith.
I was giving you a hard time, Hattie, when you said that everybody's our customer. And as marketing communications people, that's like something that makes the hair on the back of my neck. Who's your target customer? Everybody.
Really, even as communicators, think about it. The leaders that you are developing those messaging for, they're your clients, your customer.
No,
right?
It's more tongue in cheek. Is hey, we sell widgets, and everybody needs a widget, so everybody's our customer.
Well, Hattie, it's interesting that you said that.
Sorry,
because
Hattie, I had to give you a time.
I've heard for the longest time that like this is at least the pre-COVID narrative. I don't know if it was something that I heard before, but I heard from a lot of folks that were in agencies saying that if you've only worked in corporate for your entire career, that it is so difficult to make the jump to agency because now you're having to manage clients. And when I made the jump to an agency in 2021, I felt that was 100% false.
It is. You broke that myth. They say
right.
If you work in nonprofit, I worked in nonprofit for nearly 20 years.
The clients are different, right?
Yes.
It's not a corporation that you're necessarily working for, but
it's the person, the individual.
If you work at a global Fortune 10 company, it's the different business units. It's upstream, it's downstream, it's chemicals, all of these things that go into play. And so I don't know. I just think like if you can communicate in one space and you're effective at it, you can do any career.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that is something that comes out a lot in conversations with folks. It's like, hey, I'm trying to move from in-house to agency, or from agency to in-house, or I want to start my solo practice, or I want to change industries. I've been very fortunate that I started working in mining when I was in Chile doing communications. Then when I moved to the US the first time, I worked in engineering and construction. Then I moved to oil and gas, then biopharma, and now healthcare. So I've been in 5 different industries, and a lot of people ask me like, so how did you jump to every industry? From that are so different to each other. And I'm like, well, for some roles, the skills are very transferable. Especially if you've been supporting, executive communications or functional communications, like HR, technology, finance, legal. Those are basically the same across industries, don't change. Now, it's very different if you're working, for example, in mining and you want to jump into healthcare and do, marketing communications for oncology. That is a very specific area of expertise that it's likely going to present more barriers if you want to jump there. So you just need to try to find like where is the best fit from the role that you had or the experiences that you had before. Try to match them to a need that your target company has, and then jump to that, knowing that maybe that first role is not going to be your forever role in that company, but it's going to open a door where you can continue 100%. To grow and explore other opportunities.
Yeah, and raise your hand for those stretch opportunities. That's something that's incredibly important as well. And one thing that I want to touch on, because I know we're kind of running late on time, is this: the job market now is not what it was in 2021. I feel like in 2021, it was definitely a buyer's market for communications professionals. You could almost just go on LinkedIn, say that you were looking at a job, and then you'd have 25 recruiters DM you. That's not the case now. It seems that I'm hearing from a lot of people that in the comms, the marketing space, who are struggling right now, and they get defeated. One of my good friends, I spoke with him probably about 2 weeks ago, and he was so excited about this nonprofit job. And he met with the board, met with the owners, and they had told him that he was the only person that had made it this far and that they were interviewing. And then a day after the interview, they said they were going with a different person. And, he's now questioning himself. He's like, in this conversation, they asked me to do a comms plan. We talked about a comms plan and went and had a 2-hour lunch with them. Do you think that maybe they just took that comms plan and tried to do it on their own, or, went to an agency? And like, that could have happened, who knows? But what is your message to the people right now that are in this environment and they are trying to find work? How do they stay positive? What can they do to help elevate their profiles or maybe land that role, that could really be beneficial for them in this moment?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one because you're 100% right. I mean, the market is saturated and there's just so many different things happening at the same time that, it's very easy to get, overwhelmed by the current situation. Something that I always tell people, is to focus on the little wins. And that is something that, at least for me, has always worked in terms of the things that I can control versus the things that I cannot, right? And for example, your friend was saying, I did this and I didn't get it, and I really thought I was going to get it. I always say, yeah, I mean, that is something that you cannot control, but you can control what are the learnings that you're going to take from this process. How would you handle things different the next time? If you're having hesitations about, preparing a plan that maybe they're going to take and execute on their own, like maybe put a little more conditions next time if they ask you to provide a plan. You learn from every opportunity. And again, it's very corny to say probably, and you've heard it a lot of times, but success doesn't teach you much. You learn with all the failures. And that is something that we need to always keep in mind. Every failure is a new learning that will take you to success. And a win is a win, no matter how small it is. And I think in times that are so difficult, we have to focus on those little wins all the time. And also, I've said it before, like, look for help, reach out. There are many, many people willing to help. And a lot of times we just get a little intimidated by the role that we see on someone's profile of how successful they are, and like they're never going to respond. Well, you had to shoot your shot, right? Like, if you don't message someone, or if you don't reach out, you're never going to know if they're going to respond or not. And I've found that more times than usual, like they will respond, and they're kind people, they're helpful people. And not all the time it just means that they're going to offer you a job on the spot, but they're going to open doors for you. They're going to open windows for you. They're going to help you get in their circle. And again, all the little things contribute to the bigger goal. So just don't lose sight of those, because that should be your anchor.
Yeah.
I'm going to applaud your statement about shooting your shot, because I volunteer and I help mentor some university students who are juniors and seniors looking to go out, all about networking. Like, we've had to sit down and say, what is LinkedIn? And I tell them, as you're looking for your job, you have the benefit of an @edu email address. You can basically have carte blanche to email anybody in a company saying, I want to learn about your company. I want to learn about you. I want to learn about this. I want to help you, just any sort of connection. And you basically also have a window into the individual and the company, because you have like the most friendly email address under the sun versus, hey, I recently applied for a job. Why haven't you emailed me back? So I commend you. I'm actually going to tell them to come watch this podcast now because of your last statement, just so you know.
That's great. And I mean, you got to make your own opportunities at the end of the day, and I feel like the fact that you can connect with others and reach out is the only way to do that. Because again, if you do it in isolation, you get in this echo chamber, right? Where a lot of the negative thoughts and rejections and everything bad that happens to you start to crash you. And at the end of the day, all of that negativity gets to a point where you're not showing up in the best way you can, because you get affected by it, right? So it's important, to start focusing on those little wins and really focusing on the best way you can show up. And a lot of times that is not in an actual, one job that you're going to get, or be successful in an application process. Maybe it's just, as you said, volunteering in this little thing, or getting this little contribution to an article, or opening a door for someone, in an opportunity. So it's just, all about mindset. And of course, it's easier said than done, but it's a matter of practice, and it's something that you have to put into practice every day. Some days you're going to be successful, some others you're not, but you have to try again.
And check your energy.
Yes.
Energy is everything. People can feel energy and how you're coming across.
Oh, 100%.
So if you are optimistic, or if your energy and it's genuine and you're sincere about the things that you're doing and saying, people will take notice of that. And believe it or not, more people have been receptive and open to helping you if you bring the right energy to that conversation.
And also, don't be afraid to talk outside of work. Talk personal life, because like I see your guitars in the back. I know Austin because, well, I've known Austin for years, so I know that what he's behind him is just a fraction of what he has. And Hattie, I love your artwork as well. I was talking to a 25-year-old one time at a conference in Chicago, and she basically said, "I want to be a CMO. How do I become a CMO?" And I was like, "Well, I appreciate your drive. I don't know if I'm the right person to talk to, but if you sit here and you listen at this conversation, your CMO's over there talking to another person about a Fish concert. You listen over there, you have somebody talking about a golf thing. While I'm grateful that you're wanting to talk business, because I actually enjoy talking marketing communications, what makes you you?"
Yep.
And she took a step back and she was like, "Oh."
It's true. That's why I'm self-conscious now about all this open space, and you can't see the football helmets right here, or the whiskey bottles. You can't make those out. But I remember the first interview that I had, was every interview that I had with CSX, the company that I'm currently at. It was either the football helmets that were a topic of conversation. It was the Blanton's bottle that was a topic of conversation, and that was something that allowed us to connect and just show that we were human for like 10 minutes before actually getting down to the nitty gritty. That stuff matters.
Yeah, 100%, especially in the times of AI.
Yeah.
Being human is a superpower these days, and showcasing your authenticity, that you're real, that I think that's why LinkedIn is pushing video so much too, is to really show that there's actually someone behind the profile. And if you're able to nail that, that you have an advantage about so many other people. So
I feel like,
by the way, I think I'm going to get curtains too, because this whole light right here, it's killing me. I am realizing that
you are more self-conscious about that than we are. I haven't even noticed it till he threw his arm up in the middle of the
Hattie, it is killing me, because prior to all these episodes, I was so meticulous about the setup and how it looked. And then I was
we know you're not perfect, Austin.
I put everything in the same spot, but I didn't measure the dimensions, and that was totally on me. I didn't realize there's a huge window here.
You know what you need? You need a green screen. No, that'll fix all your problems.
I like his little human touches better, because
I feel like with the green screen, that after 3 hours of Zoom meetings and everybody's on green screen, your eyes start to hurt from the little cutout of everybody there.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, but it has told me that I need to update my background a little bit more as well.
Yeah. So we will no longer record for the next 3 months, and then we will come back when our homes are fully renovated.
Look at you.
There's budget for that.
That's what's okay.
No.
Well, on that note, Daniel, it's been great having you on the Business Communicators podcast. And for those that are interested in, kind of following you and what you do, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, LinkedIn, following Comms Jobs, you're probably gonna find my post there. Happy to connect with anybody directly. My URL for LinkedIn as well is Comms Jobs, so easy to find. And thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's so important for me to connect with the community and open it up so that we can create those relationships across the board, because it's a small world after all, and it's better if you know more people. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate you joining us on the episode. And Thomas, Hattie, anything to add before we wrap?
I just want to say thank you, Daniel, for being here. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and I'm always so grateful to see Thomas and Austin, whether it's virtual or in person. Those are my brothers from another mother.
Oh, true statement. No, thank you, Daniel, for getting us back all together, talking about what's going on. It's changing worlds as we speak, and if we can't lean on our friends, family network, for lack of a better statement, then who can we lean on?
Yeah.
And so thank you, and also for teaching me I need to upgrade my computer. Had to throw that in there.
Yeah, well, on that note, on behalf of the co-host, Thomas Bain, Hattie Horn, and our guest, Daniel Méndez, my name's Austin Staton, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.